is dry and fine. We've already got plenty of sunshine, and to be honest with you, that should be the way it stays. A little bit of patchy cloud bubbles up here and there, and there is a very, very small chance of a light shower. But your top temperature in the afternoon, this is good, 21 Celsius.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Oh, yeah. So now we have it. An MP can't live on £62,000 a year. I'll say it again. An MP can't live on £62,000 a year. Now, we need to establish that an MP is not actually being asked to live on £62,000 a year. An MP, quite rightly, is allowed all kinds of allowances in order for him or her to maintain a home in his constituency and a home in London. Perfectly reasonable. What they appear to have not grasped is that you and me are paying for them to build up an asset base. Now, I don't know that that's what we want to do. Surely, yes, an MP is required to be in London for 5 days a week. What's wrong with hotels? London's not exactly short of them. They could stay in a hotel. We could rent apartments for them, some quite nice, luxurious apartments, perhaps. But we could rent apartments for them. We could and should give them an allowance if they want to take the trouble to buy a property. But we should maintain, surely, we should continue to own the rights to some of that property. So if we say, well, here's your allowance, now you go and spend it how you please, fine. But if we say, how much is your mortgage, we'll pay it. I mean, like a television. Why should an MP be entitled to buy a plasma telly for his London home at yours and my expense? Why doesn't he or she simply rent one at your or my expense, and at the end of the period, when he's no longer an MP, 5 years later, he sends it back and we stop paying? Albeit we pay for another one for somebody else. But if he buys a plasma telly, a telly's got a life of probably 10 years. We pay for 5. He's got 5 for now. He's got, if you like, a second-hand telly for free. So there are problems with it. Unfortunately, Parliament doesn't know how to handle it, and the MPs are far too mean and selfish to care a fig about yours and my money. That's not all of them. Some actually did vote against the system of legitimate theft. But there are better ways of doing it. Why don't we just say, all right, you're an MP, you have to work in London 5 days a week, then fine, we'll put you in an hotel. It's that simple. It is that simple. The hotel's got everything you need. It's got laundry service, you can get your knickers washed. Yeah. It's got food, it's got drink, you even get a telly. Unlikely to be a plasma, but hey, why do you need a plasma suddenly? Exactly. And I thought they were at the Parliament 20 hours a day. What do they want a telly for anyway? So what do you think about what the MPs have just voted? Now, I'm not saying that they're all on the make. They're not. I know MPs, frankly, who do stay in hotels. They don't buy a house in London. They stay in an hotel because they've got a temporary job. I also know people who are fairly high up in some big companies, and what they do when they go to London, they either stay in an hotel or the company owns flats, rather nice, they're called service flats in London. So when a senior executive has to stay in London, he or she stays in the company flat, which is serviced and paid for by the company, but the asset value of it remains with the company, not with the individual. So why should MPs be better off than ordinary working people? Yes, they get a good wage, 62 quid a week, but you just heard the MP say he can't afford to live on that. Well, I understand that. He can't afford to live on 62,000 if he's got to maintain 2 homes. So we give him 62,000, and then we maintain one of the homes, but we keep it. We don't give it him or pay for him to buy it so that he can build up an asset. Surely that's the way forward, isn't it?
Scratch the surface. You get a mystery.
So what do you want to do, Gillian?
Well, we have a medieval riddle to solve. So we start digging.
Dig a little deeper, and you get an adventure.
Looks like we found the identity of our guys. Knights Templar.
What have you done? What have you done?
The search for the truth is beneath us. Bone Kickers starts Tuesday night at 9 on BBC One.
0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk, or you can text on 07786 206 951. Dead easy. And if you've something to say, you pick the subject, I don't care. You can talk about anything. We have no shame, as we say. Sarah says via email, Nye Bevin marked the occasion of what is now Trafford General Hospital near Manchester. It was chosen, that particular hospital, I think it was known as Park, wasn't it, at the time? It was chosen because it was quite modern, having been built by American servicemen during World War II. Otherwise, he might have ended up at an older and more significant premise, the Manchester Royal Infirmary. All right, that sounds like an internal battle, doesn't it, really? Still with the NHS, don't blame me. Anthony says, I had a triple heart bypass in February, and I'm very well now. The staff were great, the surgeons fantastic, very down to earth. What can you say when your life has been saved? It'll be a very sad day for this country if they ever stop the NHS. Long may it continue. Where do you think the NHS will be in 20 years' time? Where do you think the NHS will be in 20 years' time? It's always changing. People rail against change all the time, but it is always changing. The NHS that you and I know and love is nothing, well, it's not a lot like the NHS of yesteryear. The only thing that is still the same, is that it's free at the point of use. That's it. The treatments are different, the range of conditions that can be treated are different, the way the hospitals operate. We all remember the authoritarian system of the matron and the staff nurse and the sister on the ward. We all know about those. Those are not the same anymore. I'm not saying they're better or worse, they're just not the same. And in 10, 15, 20 years' time, they will again be different. Where do you think it'll be? What do you think of this idea of you being entitled? They have the French system, which more or less means you go to whatever hospital you want, and you're given an allowance, for want of a better term, and you spend your allowance. Exactly. I don't know. You tell me. I'd be interested. Neil in Bebington said, all right, I would just like to say to all the United States forces based in the UK, I don't wish to spoil your Independence Day celebrations and hope you have a fine time, but you're an occupying force, so would you please leave? And on this day of American independence, I, like many others around the world, are celebrating independence from America Day. Well, there's always hope. And then he says, what's this about your show times changing? Please tell us more if you can. There is no more. They're not. I'm not changing. I'm away on holiday. I do Monday and Tuesday next week, and then Wednesday onwards for a fortnight, I'm off. So I've got a fortnight off for my holidays, that's it. They're not changing. Now, what will happen when I'm off, instead of getting somebody in, they're going to do an hour each. So Heather will do the first hour, and Becky will do the second hour, and then when I come back in a fortnight's time, I'll do them both again. When I say I'll do them both again, I mean I'll do both hours. I'm not making any claims in any other directions. I don't want killing. Mike in Wesley, hi.
Good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, sir.
You might remember me. I rang you about a week ago regarding a burglary we had where credit cards were stolen from the house.
I think so, yeah.
Right, well, I'm not talking about that. That saga rolls on and on and on. At the same time, we had our car stolen.
All right.
Because the keys were in the bag.
Yeah.
And we have a car which is rather obtrusive. It's a Toyota Celica with a big wind spoiler on the back. It's my wife's car because she's disabled and she can lie in the passenger seat of the car quite reclined. So it's small. The police saw it as they were coming to the house. They saw it being driven away.
Oh dear.
But they couldn't chase it because they can't chase them in a transit van. But 5 hours later, the car was found in Swinton, and the police rang and said, "We found your car and we've taken it to our yard. The recovery service have picked it up, taken it to our yard for fingerprinting." I said, "Oh, thanks very much." So I got my spare keys, took them to the local Toyota garage and said, "Look, this has happened." They said, "Well, we'll have to look at it before you get your car back to make sure it's roadworthy, and we'll have to change the locks because the car keys had been stolen." So we rang the recovery company on a number of occasions to find out when it would be released. And they put the phone down on my wife, they just wouldn't speak to her. Some days after the car had been moved to the recovery company, they released it after having been fingerprinted by the police. I have spoken to the police yesterday, and the car was fingerprinted the following day. So it was stolen on the Tuesday, found on the Tuesday, fingerprinted on the Wednesday. We didn't get the car back to the following week. In the meantime, I received a letter from the recovery company saying I was going to be charged £120 for the collection of the car, £12 a day for every day it was in their premises, and an added cost for any additional equipment they had used. And I ended up being charged £247. My argument is the police picked my car up without my permission, took it to their recovery yard, fingerprinted it, and it's cost me £247 for the convenience of the police taking the fingerprints on the car. I have spoken to the police and said, well, I shouldn't be paying this because you have a contract with your recovery company, not with me. I've not given you my permission.
OK, we're going to run out of time. Where are we up to now?
Well, the car's back. It's spotless. There's not a mark on it.
Have you paid the 247?
My insurance company has.
The insurance company
But
paid.
it'll come back on my premium.
Well, yes, it will. OK. What do you want to know?
I want to know how I stand contractually with the police.
Well, you don't have a contract with the police, and you don't have a contract with the garage, and I wouldn't have paid the £247.
They wouldn't release my car without it.
I wouldn't have paid the £247. What I would have done is I would have written to the Chief Constable and said, you've got no right to hold my vehicle. I want it released. And when it is released, you've got no right to charge me. I didn't tell you to put it in storage.
I have done that.
You've written to him?
Yes.
Excellent.
And I've had a reply from Swinton this morning saying there's nothing they can do.
Well, write to the Chief Constable again and say, I'm sorry you think there's nothing I can do, but I'll be inviting you to tell that to a judge. I'll be taking you to the small claims court for the £247. I did not enter into a contract with the garage, you did.
All right, sir, I thought I might be on the same wavelength.
All right.
Thank you very much.
In the end, if you're making a claim off your insurer and you appear to have already decided that you're making a claim off your insurer, is it worth the bother?
Yeah, is it worth the bother? They've had to change the locks on the car, of course.
No, that's not my question. Remember my question.
Yeah.
Is it worth the bother?
Is it worth the bother? No, not really.
Right, so do you want all that heartache when you're going to end up in exactly the same position?
Thank you.
Do you?
No.
Right, well, there you are then.
Cheers.
I mean, if you hadn't claimed off your insurance and made the payment yourself, then I would have said sue them for it if you have to. But given that you've claimed it off your insurance anyway, I don't see where the problem is.
All right, thanks.
All right, mate, but good luck to you. If you enjoy rowing, of course, then get on with it. I sometimes have rows just because I enjoy them. 0161 228 2255. If you've got something to say, feel free. All you have to do is pick up your phone and say it. I'm here, of course, for a little while yet, and you can join me on that number. You can talk to Manchester and the world beyond. You can text on 07786 206951, And, of course, you can email Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline News.
A row's broken out over the way in which you're going to be consulted on plans for a congestion charge in Greater Manchester. The consultation's due to start on Monday. We've been hearing from the new leader of Greater Manchester's Transport Passenger Executive, who says he's not been given enough time to make sure the process is balanced and fair. A man's been arrested on suspicion of rape after an 85-year-old woman was attacked and stabbed at her home in Bolton 2 weeks ago. And the Emmerdale actor Clive Hornby's died. He played Jack Sugden in the soap for 28 years. Manchester's weather dry and warm, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Anna Dawson.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
Well, by far the biggest problem facing motorists at the moment is the full closure of the M6 in Lancashire, both sides of the carriageway between junction 29 Lostock Hall and 30 the Blakehoe interchange. Now, of course, it's a little further afield than I'd normally mention, but of course, what with it being a full closure north and southbound, it's starting to have implications for traffic heading that way. So please do take care. If that's the way you're heading, traffic is queuing all the way back on the northbound now to nearly 27 at Standish, on the southbound to 31 at Fulwood. Now, the reason for this is because of a 3-vehicle collision that happened earlier on today, and air ambulance is having to attend the scene. That's the reason that both sides have been closed to traffic. Taking a look now to the M60 and the M62, and all seems fairly quiet. No major issues on the M56, and we seem to be moving well on the M67, with no problems to report on public transport. Don't forget, if you can update me though, do get in touch on the travel line on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic. BBC Radio Manchester.
Listening to Cara Banks there, I'm going to get to Gary in Wigan in a moment, but listening to Cara Banks there's a problem on the M6, as you heard, and she said the air ambulance is going to be scrambled and in attendance. And just think about what goes on. There's been a collision, so the cops are obviously there. Now, the cops get paid. We pay for the cops. You and me pay for the cops in our taxes and everything else. An ambulance will be going anyway. The ambulance will be paid for out of our taxes. Possibly, not definitely, possibly the fire service, the rescue service are in attendance, cutting people out the vehicle. You and me pay for that. It's even possible, if not probable, that a paramedic will have gone there as well as the ambulance service on his motorbike to get there early. So we'll be paying for all of that. And yet the air ambulance, which I suggest is as important as any of the other services, is paid for by charity. Why are air ambulances funded out of charity? Surely they should be part of the National Health Service, or at least part of the services we provide for each other via taxation, shouldn't they? It's just a thought. What do you think? Do you think the air ambulance should be a state-run thing, like the police, like the fire service, like the ambulance service, the hospital that the people go to, the doctors and all the rest of it? Surely they should. What do you say? 0161 228 2255. Gary in Wigan. Hiya, Gary.
Hello, Alan.
What have you got, mate?
What have I got? It's about fuel prices.
OK.
I'm going to tell you as much as I know, and then if you can enlighten me even further, that'd be great, and your listeners. I'm just wondering whether fuels keeps going up. There's no shortage, so let's get that out of the way. Now, as far as I can see it, there's a certain group of people who are the buyers of this oil. You know, it's not just the companies who are drilling it, it's the buyers who just basically have a monopoly on the prices and then just stifling everyone to death and causing, things a lot worse than the credit crunch, quite frankly. Well, it's not helping anyway. Now, have I got that correct, or am I reading this wrong?
It's sort of correct and sort of wrong. First of all, you say there's no shortage, and in a way you're correct, and in another way you're not. All the answers will be like this, Gary. There's no shortage of oil. No shortage at all. Obviously, we're going to run out of it eventually and all that gubbins, but there's no shortage.
Uh-huh.
Indeed, the Saudis have just announced that they're going to pump more oil. But, of course, the problem is that we don't use oil very much. We use derivatives from it, and motor fuel of either kind is a derivative from it. And what there is a shortage of is what we might call engineering capacity to convert the oil to petrol or diesel or what have you, or any other kind of... It's a bit like there's plenty of flour, there's plenty of water, there's plenty of yeast, there's plenty of salt, but we haven't got an oven. Well, there's no shortage, but you can't make a loaf.
Yeah.
So there's that. Now, that's not a major problem, but that's part of it. Also, the way oil is sold is it's effectively... Now, again, this is wrong in terms of description, but it's effectively auctioned. In other words, it goes to the highest bidder. And people buy oil on what they call the futures market. So somebody will buy some oil and put it into a ship.
Right.
And then the ship, the tanker, will head towards Britain, for anybody's sake. But whilst it's in that tanker, other people are buying it. Someone will come along and say, well, I'll buy it. Because it's no good to them until it gets there, but they're buying it.
Yeah.
And so the price, it'll leave worth £1 million, and it'll arrive worth £2 million. Simply because of the time lag people buy and sell it. There's that old joke, isn't there? If you put a table and two antique dealers on an island, by time they're rescued, the table will be worth £150 million.
Yeah.
Because they'll keep selling it to each other. No money will change hands, but they'll keep selling it to each other. And it's a bit like that on the futures market. You buy things at price A in the belief that at some point in the future, hence the name, you'll be able to sell it for price B. And because everybody will want it then, because the closer it gets to the place where it's converted to fuel, the more valuable it becomes.
Right, so an answer to this problem is don't go to the petrol station and buy it and fill your car up.
Where are you going to buy your petrol?
Well, don't. Go on the bus.
Ah, that could be an answer, but of course the bus will have to be run on fuel, so they're going to have to go to the station to buy it.
So many buses,
there are only so many buses.
There's plenty of room on them, and get a bike.
Well, that is the answer. If it's an option for you, then yes.
Well, I find it's the only option, because everyone... I mean, most people are born idle and they jump in the car. I've seen people, literally, jump in a car and travel 100 yards on where I live on the estate and go to the shop. And it's this lovely day, and it just beggars belief. So I think the only answer is just stop going to the fuel station and filling up.
Well, yeah, that is the answer. Use less
fuel.
Yeah. That's always the way, isn't it? That is always the way.
So this fuel will stockpile, they'll have to reduce it to get rid of it, and everyone will be happy again.
Yeah, that is exactly the case. It will become less valuable if it is in less demand. The rules and laws of supply and demand will continue to apply.
So the go slow today is not really going to help much?
No, it's not going to change anything.
It's not, is it?
Yeah.
So I think the people who are listening and anyone who cares about the prices and the fact that it's nicking all these oil barons and nicking all your money, then stop going to the fuel station and get on the bus or go or walk or get on your bike.
The thing that the go slow and the lorry thing, you're talking about the thing in Chester and Wales.
Yeah.
Well, you block Wales, who gives a damn? But they blocked London yesterday with the lorries. We had that thing in Manchester just recently.
Yeah.
They have no hope of changing the mind of the speculator. However, no, hang on a minute. They have no hope of changing the mind of the speculator. But what they're trying to do is to put pressure on the government, because every gallon of fuel you buy in this country, the government makes a shed load of money.
Yeah, and that's never going to change.
You say it's never going to change, but that's the only variable. That's the only thing that you can change by public demand.
There'll be an economic crisis if they reduce that fuel, because I'm sure that they depend on it more than most things, more than smoking, I'd say.
Well, you may well be right, but of course, those who currently pay for fuel, if they can get it cheaper, they'll be happy to get it cheaper. Yeah. They little realise that the tax will have to be raised somewhere else. They all say, oh, well, the government wastes a load of money, they can stop wasting money. Well, yes, that is an argument, but of course the government doesn't stop wasting money.
No.
Every government that's come into power has said we're going to cut waste. None of them ever have. None of them ever have.
How are we in this country compared to the rest of the world, as in taxation on fuel? Are we top of the list, or are we...
I don't know whether we're top, but we're certainly very high on the list. We're actually... it's rather bizarre, is this, but... You've heard of a backhanded compliment. Well, this is a backhanded explanation, Gary.
Right.
But we are, in terms of the pain of the increase in fuel price, we're actually better insulated against that than many countries.
Yeah.
In France, they've seen their fuel price rocket. And the reason they've seen it rocket is because a very substantial proportion of the price they pay at the pump is for the oil. So when the oil price goes up, it's reflected immediately in the pumps. In the UK, when the oil price goes up, because it's a much smaller proportion of the cost of the fuel, it doesn't go up in the same proportion. Do you understand the arithmetic of that?
I do.
And so the French are really, really cross at the moment. I mean, very, very cross. And that's always a good thing.
Well, yeah, I'm surprised it's still open. They normally just shut the country down.
Well, they've had a go at that. It's been shut a couple of times, and Spain's suffering the same. But because if the fuel price goes up by 5%, then in France they pay 5% more for it. But if the fuel price goes up 5%, in this country we only pay about 2.5% more.
Right.
Because only a bit of it, a big bit, but only a bit of it, is the cost of the fuel. A big bit of it is, of course, the tax.
Right, well, so my advice to people is don't go to the pumps. It'll come down. It'll stockpile. They'll have to lower the price.
That is supply and demand. That is always the case, and if you can organise it, Garrett, fantastic.
Right, one last amusing point.
Go on.
I saw a woman yesterday. I'm not going to... Well, I don't even know who she is. She was in Chilwell. A dog crapped all over the pavement. It was a busy road, so she went down to pretend to pick it up, but didn't, and then carried on walking. Bizarre.
Very good. She was perhaps just warming her hand. Have a good day.
Bye.
0161 228 2255. If you have something to say, feel free. Alan, regarding your caller and his stolen car, contrary to what he said, the car was not recovered for the convenience of the police. It was recovered, 1, to prevent it being stolen again, 2, to prevent every likelihood that it would have been vandalised if left in situ, and 3, to fingerprint the vehicle in the hope of identifying the thief. As regards the latter point, since when is detecting criminals for the benefit of the police? It's for the benefit of everyone, surely. Individuals are very grateful when, to their benefit, their cars are recovered quickly and undamaged. But then they whinge when they realise they have to pay the recovery and storage charge. Why should you, me and the rest of the public pay for this? Well, you're right in that sense, Brian, in that we shouldn't have to pay. And we shouldn't whinge when the police hold on to the vehicle for a time in order to perform the necessary functions. But when the insurance company picks up the bill, it's easier to say, let them pay. Let the insurance company pay. It keeps our rates down. But if the police decide that they're going to allow a private company to do it, and that private company bills you and takes whatever time it wants to take, you have no control of it. The contract is between the police and the private company. That's where the contract is, the police and the private company. So the police should pay its bills. Now, if the police then want to recover that money off us, fine, let them try. But when the police give instructions to a private company to do work that they want done, that shouldn't be our bill. It shouldn't, because you have no control of it. You can't control it. You can't say, well, hang on, I'd like to shop around, thank you very much, or I'd like to go and get the vehicle myself. I'll go and collect it. It costs nothing, that. I've got my keys, I've got my bus fare, I'll collect it. But none of that is available to you, because the police enter into a contract with a private company and they virtually, literally, spend your money. You have no say. I disapprove of that. It's 25 to 1. I wonder if the government have given up any hope of winning the next general election and have voted for their extra allowance that pays towards their second home investment that will continue for the next couple of years. I see cabinet members on the basic 182,000 a year are also in the snouts in the trough group. As a lifelong Labour Party supporter, I just give up, says David. I wonder which way the Wintertons voted, he says. I have absolutely no idea. I could find out, but that would be cruel. 0161 228 2255. If you've something to say, feel free. It's dead easy. Hi, Alan. Refuel prices in Europe. I came across this online. Here we go. That's from Ray. And I've got it here. Oh, here we go. Price, unleaded pence per litre. We'll just do one of them. Austria, 75 pence per litre. This is unleaded fuel. This is just this table I'm reading from now. Austria, 75 pence. Belgium, 95. Czech Republic, 71.5. Denmark, 92. Era, 74. Finland, 89. France, 85. Germany, 90. Netherlands, 100 pence per litre. The United Kingdom, 96.5 pence per litre. The USA, I don't know how they got into Europe, but I think it's just as an example, 37.5 pence a litre in the USA. So you see the difference. Indeed, I suspect you do. 0161 228 2255. If you've something to say, you can talk about anything. There you are. We don't appear to have the highest cost fuel in Europe. I'm just looking down the figures. 96.5. We have the second highest. The highest is the Netherlands. I thought they went everywhere on bikes in the Netherlands. Well, it's perhaps just in the cities. Well, you can when there's no hills, can't you? 0161 228 2255. Hi, Alan. I have made adjustments to the way I drive. I don't accelerate towards traffic lights, junctions, etc. And also the odd coast in neutral, within reason, not on a steep hill. It has almost halved my petrol consumption, thus avoiding spending more that will go into the government's pocket. That's Ian in Northwich. Ian, just for the record, and I think I'm right in saying this, cruising in neutral is illegal. I think I'm right. I'm sure all the driving instructors who love correcting me will come on and put me right, but I'm almost certain that allowing your vehicle to cruise along in neutral is illegal. Alan in Glossop says, I'm sorry to harp on about the congestion charge. Don't you worry, Alan. You harp your head off. We don't mind. I'm sorry to harp on about the congestion charge. I'm neither in favour or against the charge. My job involves travelling around the northwest, and therefore my employer will take care of the congestion charge. However, I had to attend 2 meetings in Manchester last week. I had to take some kit with me, so took the car, and consequently was expecting to be a nightmare to get into Manchester. But, you know, it wasn't. I travelled during rush hour and found the traffic to be quite light. I actually got there before I needed to. And as I mentioned, I do travel around the northwest, and over the past month or so have noticed that the traffic has reduced. I guess the fuel prices are starting to hit. Therefore, is the congestion charge just a little too late in its implementation? Or maybe by 2012 we will get it where only the well-off will be driving cars. Public transport will be the only option for the not-so-well-off. I too have noticed that, Alan, and I don't live in Glossop, I too have noticed that traffic is somewhat lighter presently. Of course, we've yet to see whether that remains the case, but that's how it is at the moment. That's how it feels to me. Kevin, that congestion charge consultation document could be condensed to we, those who know what's best for you, having decided you're having the congestion charge. If we were to take any notice of you, those people who voted us into power, how would you like it run? Please be aware that any comment you make is for information only, and that we do not consider ourselves morally or dutifully bound to consider your views when making our decisions. Those people who bother to voice an opinion probably still believe Father Christmas will bring them what they write and ask him for. All right, well, that is a condensation, is it? Or a condensement? What is the right word? But that's it, and maybe it'll work. Eddie from North Wales asked, what was that list of petrol prices you were reading from? He thought you said 98 pence a litre. Where's the garage? I did indeed. I don't know what date that was. It was just a list of comparative fuel prices throughout Europe with the United States added on for good measure. I don't know when the list was created. That's what it was. But where's the garage? 98 pence a litre. You obviously know the price of it. I've no idea. Laurie in Kingsley. Hiya.
Hello, Alan. How you doing?
I'm not bad, Laurie. What you got?
Get yourself some donkeys, because I think there'll be in big demand shortly.
You reckon they will?
Well, the way the fuel's going. Yeah, couple of points before I come on to my main one. My son had an accident in his car, and without giving us any notice of it, because we could have gone and recovered it, because we're implanted machinery and such, the police just rang up a recovery company and they took it away. When we went to recover it, because we didn't want to pay any additional storage, they came up with a bill for about, I think it was about £240. And I said, can you give me a breakdown on this? And they said, to risk a pun, they said it was something like 120 to recover it from where they'd been out to. Well, they'd been out about 10 miles and come back, so I thought, OK, fair enough. But then there was another, the additional cost, which was 100 and something, 120-ish. I said, what's that? And they said, that's the police statutory removal cost.
Yep.
And I said, do you mean it's £120 for the police to ring you on a telephone and say, come and get it? And they wouldn't comment on it. They were very coy about it.
Cagey.
Very cagey.
Laurie, I'll come back and talk to you after the news. I've just got to do the headlines and stuff. I will come back to you.
BBC Radio Manchester.
They were cagey.
A row's broken out over the way in which you're going to be consulted on plans for a congestion charge in Greater Manchester. The consultation's due to start on Monday. The new leader of Greater Manchester's Transport Passenger Executive says he's not being given enough time to make sure the process is balanced and fair. A Manchester couple are warning other parents of the dangers of their children working abroad after their teenage son died on a working holiday in Fiji. And the Emmerdale actor Clive Hornby's died. He played Jack Sugden in the soap for 28 years. Manchester's weather dry and warm, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Anna Dawson.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
If you're travelling on the M6 northbound, it's still closed off because of a multi-vehicle collision between 29 Lostock Hall and 30 the Blakeow interchange, causing traffic to queue all the way back to junction 27 at Standish. The southbound side was also closed whilst air ambulance attended that accident. Thankfully, though, now the southbound has been reopened. However, traffic remains slow. Further south of that area on the M6, the exit slip's been closed at junction 26, the Oral interchange, after a collision happened involving a car and a motorcycle at around about 12:30. The police have closed off the exit slip road at the scene. And on the M67, there's a broken down car which is blocking off the inside lane of the 3 just before you reach the Denton Island roundabout, heading towards Manchester. So again, watch out for slow moving traffic. If you can update us further, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester. Sports with Steve Wilde.
Hello, good afternoon. Silverstone will lose the British Formula One Grand Prix in 2 years' time, with Donington Park the new venue from the 2010 season. The decision secures the future of Formula One in Britain, but means Silverstone loses the race it's staged since 1987. Zimbabwe have been persuaded to pull out of the World 2020 in England next summer. The decision was taken at the ICC meeting in Dubai. Zimbabwe do, though, retain their international status and can still play one-day internationals. It's a compromise after England and South Africa supported further reaching sanctions. The chairman of the England and Wales Cricket Board, Giles Clarke, was satisfied with the outcome, but says Zimbabwe cricket still is some way short of an acceptable standard.
A subcommittee of the board has been set up to review all aspects of cricket in Zimbabwe to see what the current situation actually is and what needs to be done to help improve standards of cricket, the grounds and every other aspect. It's universally acknowledged there are major issues.
Mark Hughes seemed confident of signing Ronaldinho for Manchester City this week. However, the player's agent has now said he's 80 to 90% certain to complete a move to AC Milan. Ronaldinho's also been linked with Chelsea or even extending his stay with Barcelona. The Stockport captain Gareth Owen says he still can't get used to the fact that he'll be playing League One football come August. County players have returned for pre-season training following promotion in May, and Owen told BBC Radio Manchester he can't wait to get going.
It has really sunk in what we achieved last season. It's only really when I look back, I see pictures of what's gone on and what we achieved. That really appreciate what we got up to and what we did. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable feeling to be at Wembley, and then to get that to get into the league above as well. I mean, you see the fixtures we're going to Leeds and places like that. It's a great feeling. It's what all footballers want. They want to play against the best teams at the best grounds, and hopefully this is the start of big things to come.
Salford coach Sean McRae says there won't be any complacency from his players for their Northern Rail Cup final against Doncaster on Sunday. The City Reds go into the match as big favourites against their National League opponents.
There's an expectation that we should win this game, and I think we all expect that, but we've not taken anything for granted. There's no overconfidence in the camp. We know what it takes to be successful, and we're not going to go away from that. But we hope it's a terrific day for the players and for the club and for the fans.
Tonight's Rugby League action sees Wigan entertain Leeds in Super League. You can hear commentary on that game in Manchester Sports from 7 o'clock. And finally, for now, Sale will complete their preparations for the new Rugby Union season with a friendly against Leeds. The match will be at Edgeley Park on Friday the 22nd of August.
North West Tonight.
60 years since the birth of the NHS, and BBC North West Tonight comes live from Trafford General, where it all began. Join us as we take a look behind the scenes at life in a busy hospital.
And meet the grandmother who was one of Britain's first NHS babies.
North West Tonight with Gordon Burns and Ranveer Singh. Tonight at 6:30 on BBC One North West.
Aye, all right. Good. We were talking to Laurie in Kingsley near Frodsham just before the headlines. He was telling us the tale of a vehicle where he went to claim it, and eventually he was told that there was a statutory charge by the police, or on the behalf of the police, and he asked them to explain it, and explanation there was none. Laurie?
Very little, yes. So I got quite annoyed about it. I mean, I didn't give if the police had rung us, we'd have said, right, we'll be there in 10 minutes to collect the vehicle.
Exactly.
We've got the facilities to do it. Anyway, basically, I said, right, I'm going to drive now. Leave the car here. Me and my son are going straight to the police headquarters at Winsford, and I'm going to demand to see the highest ranking officer that's available. I'm going to take this up with them immediately, because I'm not paying £120 for a policeman to make one phone call.
Quite so.
When I said that, there was a slight change in attitude. And the girl said, and the guy in the office said, I'll go and get the boss. The boss came in. There was a bit of quiet talking in the corner. The boss went away. The girl came across and said, we'll scrub that charge for you.
I should hope you would.
So there you are.
Absolutely, you've got to resist it.
In that 5 minutes, I earned more than a solicitor, for a few minutes.
Well, quite.
Talking.
The cops have come up with this ploy in the same way that the hospitals have, and not a lot of people know this, but when you're involved in a road traffic accident and you're whisked off to the hospital claims a fixed sum. I've forgotten what it is. It's not a big amount of money, but they claim a fixed sum from the insurance company for taking you to hospital.
Right.
Now, if an insurance company's not involved, they don't bother. But when there is one, they do. And it's the same here. If you were claiming off your insurance would pay that money.
Yeah.
And so the cops would get some of it, the garage would get some of it. On the face of it, everybody's happy, except, of course, people like you and me who end up paying then greater premiums.
Mr. Motorist pays for it all.
Was it ever thus? But that is exactly what's going on. And we've had this before, and I've even asked the Chief Constable about it, and, he's no longer with us, he's dead. But the Chief Constable at the time couldn't really justify charging the public for something that he's supposed to do. That's their job.
That's right. Yeah.
It's rather like you get mugged. The cop car comes round, there you are lying there with your eyebrow hanging off and your wallet gone. The cop car comes round and says, that'll be 40 quid, please. That's their job. That's what they're for.
Yeah, that's right. We've lost our way, and I think it was Maggie that helped us, to be honest, on this subject. But, that's a bit back now. But that's when the greed started,
I don't think it's greed. It's a case of...
It's an attitude, isn't it?
Well, it's an attitude, but I'm not sure that it's greed. I think it's just an idea of how do we get the cost down so that we can give a better service to the taxpayer.
Yeah, but I mean, I run my own business and I believe in private business, but I also believe in public service, and it's privatisation going wrong.
All right. Well, you said that wasn't your main point when we first spoke.
It wasn't. No. And you may be able to. This subject now is something that I've never heard anybody speak about. When I sit down, when I've done my hard day's work, and I sit down in front of the telly to watch the news and a programme or two. When the adverts come on, and I'm including, I think, ITV or, you know, the independent televisions and the BBC. I know the BBC don't do commercial adverts, but they do adverts for themselves. The volume suddenly goes up. And I have to reach for the remote and turn it down because it's too loud. Well, have the television companies got a right to turn my volume up in my house? I don't think they have.
Well, the first thing is they're probably not doing.
When the volume goes louder, I assume that's the volume that's gone up.
It's your mind playing a trick on you.
I don't think so, Alan.
Well, I'll tell you how it works. And
hang on, have you been on a BBC course?
No.
Answer?
I'm in exactly the same position as you, and I find it utterly unacceptable. However, this is what happens.
Go on.
There's a thing in this business, we call it compression.
Yes, right? I know about compression, yeah. It's to do with radio.
Well, it's not to do with radio waves, it's to do with volume, if the truth be told, in this respect.
Yeah.
Normally, when you're listening to something, there are high volumes and there are low volumes.
Yeah.
Now, you will have heard that at different tones. If I whisper to you, you will hear me whisper.
Yeah.
If I shout, you will hear me shout. If I shout very, very loud, you won't hear the top bit because the microphone will cut it off.
Yes.
And if I talk very, very low, you won't hear it because the microphone won't pick it up. So what it does is it gets hold of it and it sends it down one signal. But it keeps, usually, the modulation in the volume. Okay? So that's what they send. Now, when they're doing advertisements, rather like Radio 1 music sounds loud all the time, it's because they get hold of the sound and they squash it into a smaller thing. But then they play it all at the highest volume that you would normally get. So instead of getting highs and lows, all you get are all highs. It's compressed and then sent to you as all highs. And it sounds louder because every single second of the sound, every millisecond of the sound is at the highest volume.
Yes.
It's compressed. And yet, you still get the sensation that they're sounding higher and lower. It's an audio trick, for want of a better term.
So are you trying to tell me that if I measure the sound when the adverts come on, that the meter won't go up?
It shouldn't go up.
You're not certain, are you?
Well, I'm not sure how a decibel meter works, to be honest. That's where my hesitation is. The best thing I can offer you is tune to Radio 1 and see if you can hear the silences, the quietnesses, and you can't. And the reason you can't is because they're compressed out.
Yeah.
And then tune to Radio 3, which I do a lot. And when you're listening to Radio 3, particularly if you're not listening on digital, when you're listening to Radio 3, there are moments when you think your radio's gone off because there's no sound. Or you can hear just one instrument very, very quietly, like you do at the concert hall. But they don't do that with Radio 1. It's just boom, 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 boom. The whole thing is compressed and thrown at you at once.
I think if we ended up in court over it,
you'd lose.
No, I'm not so sure. I think a sensible judge might well say, "Thank you, Mr. Beswick, for your technical explanation. However, to the layman, the volume has increased, and he has to get up and turn it down. Therefore, you should stop doing it."
Well, a sensible judge might say that, but if you can ever find a sensible judge that will go that will go against the evidence presented, then I wish you luck with that. Have a good day, Laurie. Ta-ra now.
Later, cheers.
0161 228 2255. I'm not an audio expert, but that's the explanation I've been given many times by those who claim to be such things. John in Wigan. Hiya, John.
Hiya. Afternoon, Alan.
Afternoon.
I went to Australia in November, left my car with my friend legal to use, doing a job for me. I came back 3 weeks to a month later. It had been pinched the first few days. The price for storage, this absolute shed that was burned out on the Hayall car park to nothing. It was unrecognisable. was parked in this Lee car place, or a storage, and accumulated about £400 odd worth of a letter behind the door telling me how much he was charging a day. My mate hadn't sorted it out because, I don't know why, because he didn't want to pay, he weren't interested. Well, it was all taken out of his hand. I had to then sort the car, get the car, phone this and that, and I was faced with this £400 odd because I was in Australia. The car wanted to just crush it, and I said to him, why don't you just crush it? It was only worth a few £100 anyway, so it had been...
Yeah, the difficulty with crushing it is they haven't got the right to, although it would be the wisest thing.
What I'm saying is they were charging X amount a day for an absolute burnt out... It was unrecognisable as a car. It was that much, it had exploded. It just filled it full of petrol, and it was like it went off like a bomb.
I bet it did. But just imagine if you came back from Australia. And you well, okay. Just imagine when you came back from Australia, if the police said your car's been stolen and we've scrapped it. You'd say what?
If they said to me it was burned out, which it was.
No.
Well,
you very well.
Common sense prevailing here.
Common sense requires that you trust the person to make the decision that's best for you.
There's only one decision to be made, isn't there?
Well, there is one decision. Do we destroy the vehicle without permission of the owner, or...
A picture of it, burnt out wreck.
No, that's not the decision. No, look, the decision is... This is the decision the police has to make. Do we destroy somebody else's property, or do we look after it until he or she can collect it? That's the decision. Now... There are times when the wisest thing to do, in monetary terms, would be to destroy it. But they don't have the right...
for 6 months, then, which is possible.
Well, you could have gone away for 6 years.
Yeah.
They do not have the power to decide that your vehicle, providing it was legally on the road, that your vehicle is no longer available. That's a job for your insurance company. They can't just destroy it. That's not what the police are for. They don't have that right. It's not theirs, it's yours.
When you say insurance company, if you have a third-party insurance, which basically, because I deal in wrecks all my life, 12 months wrecks and buy another, for some miracle, because I quoted, my insurance quoted me, and the difference between fully comp and third party was absolutely just about 20 quid. For some miracle, I decided to go for the fully comprehensive, which the premium went up by a couple of £100 after, by the way. But the thing was, you say the insurance company deal with it. They wouldn't have done it. If I'd have been away in Benidorm, like some people go for 6 months, and my mate hadn't done anything because the letters weren't going to his house regarding the cost, then it could have been...
well, no, because when you came back...
Yeah, but it could have been thousands.
Well, of course it could. But when you came...
the third party don't recover the
Dave, John, we've a couple of things going on simultaneously here. First of all, the police do what the police do, and that is they remove it from the street and they put it somewhere safe. That's their job over. They put it somewhere safe. Now, there might be an argument, I can see a very valid argument, arguing over, I never instructed the garage to look after it, so I'm not paying the garage. If the police instructed the garage, that's up to the police. That's how they deal with their responsibility. That's their decision. But they can't destroy somebody else's property just because they feel like, or they think the person would be glad we did.
If
they can't do
would
that.
have been £1,500 and I'd have had my normal...
They still can't do it. John, they still can't do it. The police cannot destroy your property just because they think you want them to.
I didn't ask them to take it over.
They still can't do it, John. We can carry on after 1 o'clock. My view won't change, but we can carry after 1 if you like.
I've got all your travel tips and hints live from Manchester Airport this afternoon from 2 with me, Matt White, in for Becky.
Could you imagine, John? He came back from Australia. He said, I was in Australia in November. I've just come back. I've got home. I found out the police have destroyed my car. What the hell's going on? Is this what I pay my rates for? Exactly.
95.1 FM.
DAB digital radio and the World Wide Web. This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, there's a row over how your views will be taken over Greater Manchester's congestion charge, and a Manchester couple warn other parents about the risks of their children working abroad.
Silverstone loses the British Grand Prix.
Well, this afternoon we've got some sunny spells and just a chance of an isolated shower. Top temperatures 21 Celsius.
And don't forget, if you're using the M6 at the moment, at junction 26, the Allan interchange on the southbound, the lane on the exit slip's still closed off because of an accident involving a car and a motorcycle.
Good afternoon, I'm Anna Dawson. A row's broken out over the way in which you're going to give your views on plans for a congestion charge in Greater Manchester. The public consultation's supposed to start on Monday, but the new chair of the Passenger Transport Authority, Matthew College, has called for it to be delayed. He says he's not been given quite enough time to ensure the process is fair and accurate. His request's been rejected, but Councillor College insists a slight delay is needed.
We only asked for a delay of a week. So I think that's, in terms of a 3-month package, in terms of £3 million worth of consultation, potentially going on to £3 billion worth of spending, asking for a week's delay just to have a pause, to have a think, just to go over it all, isn't unreasonable.
More than 1 million 11 and 14-year-olds in England will not get their SATs results on time. The National Curriculum Test results, which were due to be published next week, are being postponed by a week because of administrative and computer problems. At least 10% of the tests have not yet been marked. The government's promising an inquiry. The family of a Manchester student who died during an expedition in Fiji are warning other parents of the dangers faced by young people working abroad. 17-year-old Luke Molnar was electrocuted after touching a metal washing line that was in contact with power cables nearly 2 years ago. At the time, he was on a month-long trip to help conserve coral reefs. His mum, Anne, says it's important the travel companies organising the trips do what they say.
Really, I think the most important message is to try and make sure that the companies that their children are going with actually do what they say they will do. They have a guide there that you can follow, but they need to make sure they have the assurances first that everything that's in there is as it should be.
A man's being questioned on suspicion of rape after an 85-year-old woman was attacked and stabbed at her own home in Bolton. The 22-year-old man's being questioned about the attack 2 weeks ago. MPs are being criticised for voting to keep their controversial expenses system. It allows them to claim up to £24,000 of taxpayers' money to fund a second home. At the moment, they can claim for things like washing machines and furniture. A group of Manchester school children have gone into the Dragon's Den today. The pupils from the Manchester Academy have been pitching their business ideas to Dragon star and entrepreneur Peter Jones. Roxana and Shamira have been telling us more about their big idea.
It's been quite difficult. I had to do lots of hard work. We've got lots of different ideas about cards. We've got changing the pictures into sort of like negative and black and white for the cards. We've got e-cards where you can take pictures, where you've got pictures of landmarks and you can put yourself on them, beside them and next to them.
It's been announced that the Emmerdale actor Clive Hornby has died. He was 63. He played the role of Jack Sugden in the soap for 28 years. And the veteran BBC reporter Sir Charles Wheeler has died. He was 85. He was seen as one of the most forthright reporters of his time, covering some of the biggest stories of the last 50 years. The BBC's Director General Mark Thompson's described him as a legend.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Joanne Smith.
Good afternoon. Silverstone will lose the British Formula One Grand Prix in 2 years' time, with Donington Park the new venue. F1 boss Bernie Ecclestone says major developments at Donington and the failure to improve facilities at Silverstone are behind the decision. It means Silverstone loses a race it's staged since 1987. Mark Hughes seems confident of signing Ronaldinho from Manchester City this week. However, the player's agent has now said he's 80 to 90% certain to complete a move to AC Milan. Ronaldinho has also been linked with Chelsea, or perhaps even staying with Barcelona. Sale Sharks will begin the 2009 season with a trip to Newcastle Falcons on Sunday, the 7th of September. Sale's first home game will be against Saracens at Edgeley Park on Friday, the 12th of September. Wasps, meanwhile, provide the opposition on Boxing Day, and newly promoted Northampton will visit Edgeley Park for the final game of the season. And top seed Roger Federer is just getting his Wimbledon semi-final underway against Russia's Marat Safin on centre court. Next up, second seed Rafael Nadal takes on the oldest man in the draw, 32-year-old Rainer Schuttler from Germany.
BBC Radio Manchester, satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, this afternoon doesn't look too bad at all. It's dry with some sunny spells for many of us. The cloud will increase and there is just the slimmest chance of seeing an odd isolated shower. But it should be warm with top temperatures getting to 21 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hi, all right. There's a story in the evening news today that I quite like. It's actually nothing to do with Manchester. It's from Bedford. And it says this. A taxi firm has been fined for refusing to allow a blind man's guide dog into a cab. Bedford Council prosecuted the company after they refused to pick up the blind man. The private hire firm admitted breaking the Disability Discrimination Act and was fined £250. It was ordered to pay £15 victim surcharge plus £250 towards the council's costs. Well done, Bedford Council. Absolutely brilliant. How outrageous that a taxi firm turns up, or a private hire firm turns up, and won't let a person in the car because they've got a guide dog with them. I wouldn't let any other dog in, but, a guide dog, hearing dog, any of the, if I can use the phrase, disability dogs. But oh, dear heaven. Some people in public service don't give a stuff about the public. 0161 228 2255. Dave in Hazel Grove. Hiya, Dave.
All right, Alan, how are you doing?
Not bad, mate.
Just a back end of a call earlier on, a guy who was broken down and recovered by the police attended, and he was recovered to the garage, and he got a £120 bill or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, apparently, I've got good information that the police, every time they have a list of approved garages that they use, and if they come to your aid and phone the garage for you, when that a proportion of that 120, I think it's 15 or 20 quid, goes to the police for everyone they recover. What's that charge for then?
That's everybody's got to make a living charge.
But I mean, we don't we pay for the police force in our rates and taxes?
Well, yes, we do. The great difficulty is that the police have the obligation to remove the vehicle from the road. They can't just leave it there. And it costs them a lot of money. Now, we've had loads and loads...
It costs us a lot of money, I think.
Well, it always in the end costs us. But we as taxpayers have let it be known to our politicians that we want everything for the cheapest possible price. Now, the police don't employ people to go around and pick up damaged motor cars. They don't. That's not what they do. So what they do is they get somebody who does this for a living to come and do it. Now, he wants paying. So he says, I've got a bill for you here. And the police say, well, we can't afford that, because if we spend our money on car recovery firms, that's less money we've got to pay for police.
Yeah, I understand that, Alan. I understand what you're saying, but what... If you're recovered, say you break down at the pyramid in Stockport, for instance, and you're recovered, but the police come and say, right, we need this vehicle moving out of the way, quite rightly so, and it's going to cost you £120. That's a statutory charge, that £120.
Yes, it is.
Then you've got your garage bill for the overnight charge.
Yeah.
I think it's outrageous, because if you phoned a garage to come and recover you, they wouldn't charge you £120. They charge you 30 quid or
I've no idea what they would pay, but you're absolutely right. No one's disagreeing with you. You're right. And I also think you're right, and I think it is unacceptable that the police enter into a contract, to all intents and purposes on your behalf, with a third-party service provider.
And not only that, Alan, you can be in the AA as well. You can be broken down on the motorway.
Quite.
Hold on a minute. The police come. Oh, it's all right. I'll be sort of phoning you. How long are going to be? An hour. Oh, we can't be here an hour. We've got one on the way. And you still get. You're in the AA and you pay your AA dues, and you still get recovered on the motorway, and you still get your £120 bill.
Well, yes.
Garaging.
I'm afraid I agree if you're there and they say, we want you off here as soon as possible because you're causing a danger, because a vehicle on the side of the motorway is an acute danger. We know that from the body count over years. So we know that, and I understand them saying, we want it shifted. We're not prepared to have everybody that passes this car have their life at risk for any second longer. So we're going to shift it, and that's going to cost you, because you shouldn't have broken down.
Right.
But, when you're not there, when it's an RTA, when your car's stolen and all the rest of it, I'm afraid they don't have the right, they ought not to have the right to engage in a contract on your behalf. They've no right to do that. They've no right to say, that bloke over there is now going to do some work for you and you're going to pay him.
That's right.
If they think it is our job, the police service, to render this safe, then that's our job. That's what they do.
I want to know where that money's going that they're taking.
It goes in the coffers. It goes in the coffers.
Is the T-fund coffers or
no?
What coffers are we talking about?
It goes in
the bussy coffers that they have.
No, none of those things. It goes into the police budget. And the police budget, the police bank account, if you like, is what pays the police officers and the like. And I suppose it's a few £1,000 over a year, which may just about pay for a pair of shoes for a copper. It goes. I mean, there's not a copper somewhere sitting there thinking £30 every time. It's brilliant. It's not whacked out amongst the lads, but it is whacked out amongst the police service. It's one of their incomes, if you like. A small one, but one of them.
Well, I think it's wrong.
Well,
and if I can just digress, Alan, just slightly and talk about the congestion charge. What a rip-off that is. I mean...
How is it a rip-off?
Because how is it a rip-off? We're going to pay to go into town and pay to come out of town. And what's the justification for that? To cut traffic down.
Yeah.
Well, they want it every way. They're charging you. Extra on your road tax.
Dave.
Extra on your fuel. You can't fucking win.
Dave.
What?
The only way, there isn't another, there is no other, the only way to get people to do something they don't want is to make it hurt if they don't. That's how it works.
And what they're offering, they're saying, oh, we're going to make public transport accessible to all. How long have we been hearing that from the councils? How many years have they been saying that?
They've been saying we are doing the best we can with the money.
It's not good enough. The best they can, is it good enough?
And they agree with you. They agree with you. It's not good enough.
And what they're offering isn't good enough, Alan.
And they agree with you.
If you're an old person,
the council agrees with you, Dave.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. The council thinks public transport is not good enough.
Yeah, and they want us, the people of Manchester, to pay for it.
Who do you suggest? Who do you suggest? Who do you suggest pays for it? Who do you
anyway?
Yeah, and at the moment it's not good enough. If you want it better, and I don't know whether you do or not, if you want public transport to be better, will you agree with me here and now? Just a simple question. If you want it better, do you think it will cost more?
It will cost more.
So will you go? Okay, whoa! No!
You're having it all your own way, Alan.
I'm not having anything my own way. I'm asking you simple questions. I thought you could cope.
You'll pay more, and it won't be better. I can assure you it will not be better.
Dave,
you've got people spending our money who aren't earning it. They're not earning the wage every week.
Dave, you've changed the argument. Dave, you've changed the argument. If what you're saying... Well, you do that. You have to have some in your life, and it sounds like you're not getting anywhere else.
I'm not.
You and me both. So here we go, Dave. If your argument is that the congestion charge will be a rip-off because it will not deliver what it's promising, that's
Correct.
a perfectly reasonable argument.
It won't.
Well, that's fine. I've no problem with that, if that's your
And when
point
it
of
doesn't,
view.
I'm coming back to you to tell you.
Well, no,
But it won't.
I could possibly agree with you.
We'll have all this money that we should have had anyway off the government to improve the transport that we should have anyway. We shouldn't have to be paying extra for it. We should be having it.
Let me ask you something else, Dave. I'm going to do another one of these quick. Let me ask you something else. Now, it's a simple question, and it's very, very difficult to know the true answer. But we'll go with because you might, like me, be able to make an educated guess. Do you think at the end of every year, when the government does the books, do you think they look at each other in the Treasury and they say, we've got £100 billion left that we've not spent. How the bloody hell's that happen? Do you think that happens? Or do you think at the end of the year they think, crap, we've run out of money? Which do you think it is?
It's the answer B, Alan.
Crap, they've run out of money.
Yeah.
So they've got to do.
And it's our money.
We know whose money it is. We know whose money.
Tax money that they're spending.
They've spent it. That's it.
Correct. You could have an housewife. You could have an ordinary housewife who's got to earn a living and make ends meet every week, would do a better job of running the country than the government would, because they understand what money's all about, Alan. We work hard and we pay tax, and that's hard-earned money. The government don't work hard; they just pay out. They just waste our money on rubbish.
Will these be the housewives that buy ready meals and burgers for their fat, toothless children?
No, they don't all do that.
No, they don't, but have a look around. It might be the majority. The one thing that has rocketed in sales in recent years has been food that you don't have to cook.
But no one's got any time. We're all out working.
All right, they're all out, yeah.
We're all out working.
Well, in the end, what might happen... right, that's...
To live. We can't afford to spend 4 hours preparing a meal.
Well,
we're
there
all
you go.
working to pay the bloody tax.
Well, Dave, I don't know what they eat in your house, but I can do a banquet in 4 hours, but...
I bet you can't. I bet it's your missus that does it. I bet it's not you.
No, you're wrong there,
I bet you can't peel a spud. Come on.
I bet I can. I've been in the army. I've peeled bloody thousands. Have a good day, Dave.
All right, mate. See you later.
No. 0161 228 2255. Alan, regarding Jodrell Bank, if, as I hear, it's now been saved by new funding, I ask the question why it found itself in that situation and why it should be bailed out. Firstly, the name Jodrell Bank and the work it does is world-renowned. Why, then, can't it raise funds from those around the world who benefit from its work and research? What benefit does the UK alone get from Jodrell Bank that its existence and survival should be supported by a financial bailout from the UK? I don't know the answer to that, but if I seem to remember that the decision to do away with Jodrell Bank wasn't that it wanted more money or what have you. I don't think it was that. I think it was that the people in London and Oxford and Cambridge and other Ponzi places who make the decision about how to share out the money decided they could live without Jodrell Bank because it was just somewhere, isn't it, up north somewhere. So all those southerners decided, oh, don't worry. Or even more important, all those Oxford and Cambridge wallers said it's just connected to some northern university. It's not with us.
Your Sunday Morning Lion with Mike Shaft.
The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe was a huge, huge hit. Why do you think it's still relevant to today?
Quentin Tarantino famously said that cinema is the new church, and it's not at all preachy. No one would sit there and say, I feel like I'm in a religious education lesson.
Mike Shaft.
What is the status of religion in our modern society?
For many writers, religion is something which the modern writer has reacted against and would see religion as being an authority which they will defy in their punkish and poetic way.
Manchester's faith, spirit, and life's difficult questions with Mike Shaft.
What was so scary about him?
Sunday morning from 7 on BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. How are you? Mark says, good afternoon, Alan. Mark in Manchester. Regarding one of your earlier correspondence, I am not a driving instructor, but I think you're correct regarding the legality of coasting. In other words, allowing your vehicle to run downhill in neutral. So there. What I would say, says Mark, now this is worth listening to, particularly if it involves me coughing. Hang on a minute. There. What I would say, says Mark, is that when a car coasts, it is effectively in neutral and the engine needs fuel to prevent the engine from stalling. However, when engine braking in gear, the engine is kept from stalling by the wheels turning the engine via the gearbox. This means no fuel is required, hence better fuel economy. I hope this helps the caller save his or her licence and money. So what Mark is saying is instead of rolling down the hill with the engine running, but the vehicle in neutral, so the engine is just keeping itself going, and gravity is keeping the vehicle going, if you put the vehicle in gear and allowed the gearbox and gravity to offer resistance to the engine, you will use less fuel. Now, I'll have to think about that and get a pencil and paper to work out whether it's true or not, but I merely pass it on from Mark in Manchester. I've no idea what the answer is. Mildred in Withington, with you in a minute.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news. A row's broken out over the way in which you're going to be consulted on plans for a congestion charge in Greater Manchester. The consultation's due to start on Monday. The new leader of Greater Manchester's Transport Passenger Authority says he's not been given enough time to make sure the process is balanced and fair. A Manchester couple are warning other parents about the risks of their children working abroad after their teenage son died. And the Emmerdale actor Clive Hornby's died. He played Jack Sugden in the soap for 28 years. Manchester's weather dry and warm, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Anna Dawson.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Well, if you're travelling on the M60 at the moment, traffic seems to be moving along freely between junction 18 all the way through to junction 5 at Princes Parkway clockwise and anti-clockwise. If you're using the M6 at all and you're heading northbound, the northbound carriageway is still shut between 29 Lostock Hall and junction 30 the Blacko interchange, and traffic's queuing back towards junction 26 at the Oral interchange. There was an accident around northbound M6 at junction 26 not so long ago, but thankfully the vehicles involved have been cleared and the exit slip reopened to traffic. And M67 traffic westbound heading in towards Manchester moving better now that those vehicles involved in that collision have been recovered. Westbound traffic just before Denton Island moving at a nice steady pace again. Don't forget, if you can update me further, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
2020 traffic means you get an update every 20 minutes through the day.
Mildred in Withington. Hiya, Mildred.
Oh, good morning. I'd love to I won't keep you long, but I've been watching this programme on the hospitals.
Yes.
You know, this is it 60 years since.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, why is it they only show the good hospitals, you know, what they do? Why don't, I mean, my friend went to one hospital, I won't mention the name. She went at 2 o'clock the other afternoon, the other week, she got something wrong with her knee. And she waited she's 91, and she waited from 2:30 till 20 to 8 before they saw her. And they don't show all that, do they, all this? I mean, it's all, what the nurses are doing. You know, I mean, why don't they show all this, what's going on? I mean, lots of people are complaining, aren't they, about, the hospitals?
Well, you're correct in that a lot of people are complaining.
Yes.
But I think what they're doing today on television, radio, and indeed in the newspapers, what they're doing today is celebrating 60 years of the National Health Service.
Yes.
And they're saying that overall in the 60 years,
yes,
it's been absolutely superb.
Yes.
There have been other programmes, I've made them and just about every broadcaster's made them, about things that have gone wrong in the health service. So,
yes,
but today is like, it's like when you're bringing your kids up, you treat them like hell for 364 days a year, but on the birthday you give them a bit of leeway.
Yes.
So I think today's just a party. Today they're just saying the NHS, there you go, it's been here for 60 years, hasn't it been brilliant overall? And it has. Your friend with the knee, just imagine 65 years ago, if she had a problem with her knee, she'd have still got a problem with her knee. She wouldn't have waited 5 hours, she'd have waited the rest of her life, because she wouldn't have been able to afford it.
Yeah.
So that's what they're saying. That's why today it's party time. It's 60 years.
But, if she could afford it, she wouldn't have waited. She could have gone private.
Well, no, she should have been able... But that would have been her only option before the National Health Service. If you couldn't afford an operation, you didn't get one. That's it. And I mean, there were some charity hospitals about, but in principle, there was nobody with the responsibility to give you free health care. 60 years ago, the then government created the National Health Service, which you and I know and love, and criticise, But today, it's its birthday, and it's a big birthday, and they're saying, didn't they do well? Or didn't we do well in creating it and maintaining it over these years? So that's why today the pictures are all the good stuff. But the only reason you know about all the bad stuff in the NHS is because those same journalists have told you.
No, not really, because, I mean, well, I've been in hospital the other week, and I didn't think, I mean, you know, the treatment you get after, you know, like, you can't get any help. Like, I've come out, I've on my own. Now I can't get any help. Because, I mean, they put you through to these agencies, you know, like the social services. They'll put you through to an agency to help, and they want £12.50 an hour for a cleaner, which I think is ridiculous.
Well, it's certainly an expensive cleaner, is that? But
I mean, they won't climb anything, they won't do windows. You see, I suppose that's different, perhaps, you know, but, I mean, it's the aftercare a lot of people don't get. I mean, my mother had a stroke about 30-odd years ago, and she was more looked after now than she is now when she came out.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anybody today saying in the celebrations of the health service that it's perfect.
No.
But whatever way you slice it, it's been pretty good for 60 years. Yeah. And frankly, the alternative is to rely entirely on one's own funds.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose, really, yeah. But
so all I'm saying, I'm not saying the National Health Service is perfect, but in answer to your question, why is nobody criticising it today, the answer is because it's its birthday.
Yeah, is that why? Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good on you, Mildred.
Yes, all right,
Cheers now. £12.50 an hour for a cleaner. That's expensive, isn't it? Isn't it? David in Cheshire, who did they build Portcullis House for in London? And at what cost? I don't know. The Dutch public transport says, text, the Dutch public transportation system, there's a word we don't hear much outside America, the Dutch public transport system is second to none, both trams and trains. Maybe that's why fuel costs as high as it does, so few people use their car. Could it be the other way round, mate? Could it be that so few people use their car because petrol's so expensive? Dave from Ratcliffe says your car will use less fuel if you freewheel downhill than if you have the car in gear. Well, I told you I didn't understand it, but I still don't. Steve in Chadderton. Hiya, Steve.
Hi.
What have you got?
Right, this congestion charge.
Yes.
Outrageous.
Why?
Well, as an agency driver...
As a what?
I'm an agency driver, a lorry driver, SUV driver.
Oh, I see. Right, go on.
Right. Now, I can be working very one day, Rochdale next, Manchester another day. What am I supposed to do? Carry a whole pocket full of bus passes with me?
How do you manage when you go to London?
Exactly.
Well, that's doesn't cover the answer much for me, really. How do you manage when you go...
Local work, local companies.
OK. Do you know any people who do the kind of work you do in London?
I don't know.
No. Well, you might want to... Well, I appreciate that. You might want to check with the people who are living and working with the congestion charge in London at the moment and see how it works for them. Because I think local delivery people in London make a one-off payment, and that's it. I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Others will put me right. So it's unlikely that you will be going back and two across the boundary. I mean, yes, you will. You're in Chadderton. If you come into Manchester, you may well then go out to, I don't know how far you go, but you may then go out beyond the M60 and then come back in again. Well, first of all, the charge at the moment is planned to be, I don't think it'll stay like this for long. I think the hours will be expanded without a doubt, but at the moment the plan is it'll be the two rush hours, as we call them. So it won't be all day every day like it is in all day 5 days a week like it is in London.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's going to cost you more. That's for sure.
Exactly. And who'll pay for that?
You.
The driver.
Well,
or the company I work for.
You. Well, when petrol goes up, who pays for that? When your wages go up. So do you ever say to? I mean, I don't know. Are you employed or are you self-employed?
I'm employed.
You're employed.
Yes,
do you ever say to your manager, do you ever say to him, look, don't give me any more wages because you'll have to put your prices up? Do you ever say that to him?
Yes.
You do? You say, don't give me any more...
Yes.
Please don't give me a pay rise.
Well, see, I'm not on if I get paid for work or not, but you have to go to Manchester when he comes in, I will suffer.
Yeah, did you hear the question I asked you? I don't think you did. Oh, no, I didn't think you did. The question was, do you ever say to your boss, look, you've had a hard year, don't give me a pay rise?
No.
In fact, cut me money. You don't?
No.
Why not? Because you're making it so hard for your employer, all these expenses you cost him. Do you know what? Do you want to know something really interesting? Mm-hmm. You are the biggest bill your employer has. The biggest single bill your employer has is you.
Mm-hmm.
Not the congestion charge, not fuel, not the cost of the vehicle, not the taxes. The biggest single cost to your employer is you. So if you want to save the company you work for, half your wages. 0161 228 2255. Frank says public transport is not a service. It's a farebox-funded business for shareholder profit, and I do not accept that the solution for Greater Manchester, the one and only solution, is what we're being offered. Trams are a non-substitute for decent railways, but GMPTE are obsessed with them to the detriment of everyone who lives off the routes where they will run, as their plans are predicated purely on radial journeys into Manchester and not peripheral journeys around the towns of Greater Manchester. Manchester Victoria to Eccles, 8 minutes by train, 35 by tram, for instance, and try living in Gamesley and working in Trafford Park. Tell me the public transport that does that one. With £3 billion, I would have park and ride at every rail crossing of the M60, get HM government to regulate bus services to require neighbourhood buses from the rail stations, reinstate peripheral rail routes as only Bolton, Bury, Oldham to Ashton and a curve at Warrington would be needed to create an outer Manchester loop that would then have interchanges too. Trams on routes where there's no other option, fine, if you want slow, standing travel. But it's the car that is the competition. Would this reduce traffic? Who knows? But it would provide an alternative. I fully support the delaying of the consultation. What I've seen so far is one-sided, lacking in a return address for comment, and condescending in tone. Referendum? Bring it on, says Frank. Well, if nothing else, Frank, we can very easily agree on the fact that consultation is a waste of time, effort and money. Consultation is a con. Consultation is mummy kissing it better. That's what consultation is. The politicians know that they've really peed you off, and so they say, mummy will kiss it better. You can have consultation. Consultation is a valueless, pointless, expensive lie. It means nothing. It means you can run around, you can stamp, you can shout, you can consult, but they don't have to do what you say. Consultation has nothing to offer to the debate. Consultation is the public system that is the equivalent of mummy will kiss it better. It is a crap con. that you and me pay taxes to fund. Kevin in Hyde. Hiya, Kevin.
Hello there.
Hello.
Congestion charge, it is outrageous. Everybody agrees, and we all know that a referendum will kill it. If we have a chance to speak, a referendum will kill it stone dead, and it'll be out of the water. That's why they don't want to give us one. We all know that. But I'll tell you why I think it's outrageous. Because the British motorist already pays £46 billion per year in various taxes. Okay, 46 billion. Just think about that figure. That's an enormous figure. And from all taxes that the British motorist pays, the congestion charge is to finance the borrowing of a paltry 1.2 billion, right? 1.2 billion, and that's all the congestion charge is going to finance, and it's going to take us 30 years to pay that back, and it's going to inconvenience everyone who wants to do freely travel in and out of Manchester. Now, how can you make those figures make sense?
Well, first of all, the 1.2 billion that the government are going to put in, out of the 46 billion that you quote, is only for Manchester. The 46 billion is what the motorist, in your figures, what the motorist throughout the nation pays. I wonder what the motorist in Greater Manchester pays.
Well, we are the second city. I mean, we are the second city, or we claim to be.
That doesn't actually answer the question, but it's a nice statement to make.
Well,
you started quoting figures. I'm asking you to quote me another so I can do the calculation you've invited me to do.
Well, let's say the Greater Manchester motorist will pay an enormous chunk of that, because we're a very
when you say an enormous chunk.
Well, I can't quote you a figure, Alan.
Well, quite. So the figures you quote the figures that you have.
Well, yeah, because
and
I know
you then
that
ask
figure.
me, and then you ask me to make sense of them. I will say to you, your figures, because they are incomplete, are irrelevant.
No, they're not irrelevant, because...
Well, you ask me, how do I equate the value for money that the Greater Manchester public gets if I don't know the money involved?
Well, I think the money should come from the national budget.
Well, that's a separate argument. I'm perfectly happy for you to make that case. Make that case. It should come from the national budget, which would mean it would be £3 billion from the national budget.
It would be £3 billion from the national budget.
Imagine if Sheffield wanted it as well. Would that be another £3 billion?
Well, they don't, do they?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Well, they've not actually had a bid in.
Well, they did have a bid in. That's how they got their tram service. Ours was accepted where others were rejected. But I promise you, if the government said, Manchester, of course you can have £3 billion for your public transport, then Birmingham would say, what about ours? Glasgow would say, what about ours? Newcastle would say, what about ours? And very soon, how many cities are there in this country? Do you know that?
Alan,
how many cities are there in the country? Do you know that?
There are quite a few.
Do you think... Let's divide 46 by 3 and see what the number is. What do you think 3 divided by 46 is? That's 15. Do you think there are more than 15 cities in the United Kingdom?
Alan,
do you think there are more than 15 cities in the United Kingdom?
There probably are, but Alan, can I just say something?
And if they all want it...
Is this your point of view? Or is
it's not a point of view. I'm trying to make sense of your figures that you offered.
Why don't you let me speak? Why don't you let me speak?
You said you didn't know.
If you let me speak, I can explain.
Oh, good, you'll explain. So how much does the Greater Manchester motorist pay towards the National Exchequer?
Well, is this a phone-in for the listener to ring in and give a point of view?
You must make your own judgment. Kevin, if you've come on... Kevin, if you don't like the way the programme's run, then don't bother it.
No, I want to give my point of view.
You did do, and I asked you a question and you don't know the answer.
It's the Allan Beswick soapbox again.
Kevin, if you don't like it, don't take part. Kevin.
You won't let me take part because
I've offered you the chance. You said you were going to tell me why the congestion charge was outrageous, was your word. I asked you why. I'm explaining... Kevin, I asked you why, Kevin, and you gave me a load of figures that make no sense. Kevin...
Why don't you let me explain and make some sense?
Well, OK, well, don't... I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll make an agreement here, Kevin.
Yeah, let me speak.
I will listen to your opinion unless you give me made-up, incomplete figures, in which case I'll just cut you off. So do it without numbers. Do it without numbers.
Well, let me express a point of view. That's what the programme's about.
I'll decide what the programme's about, Kevin, but do it without numbers and off you go.
OK, I'll do it without numbers. What I'll say is all these extra cities that you claim will make a bid, for an upgraded public transport system, sure, that's fine, and in years to come, year by year, they can have a chunk of that 46 billion that the British motorist pays. And within 5, 7, 10 years' time, every city will have an upgraded public transport system. And thanks for letting me put my point of view from the Allan Beswick soapbox.
Kevin, one last question. Oh, you've gone, never mind. I was just going to ask you what was wrong with the congestion charge, but you appear not to have told me. 0161 228 2255. You got something to say? Great. But don't make numbers up and then ask me to explain them. If you want to use numbers, use them. But know them first. 0161 228 2255. You want to join us? That's fine. Alan, this may come as a disappointment to you and many of your Let's Have a Whinge at the Police listeners, but the police haven't just thought up the recovery and storage of vehicle procedures as some kind of merry wheeze. Parliament has laid down the procedures which the police have to follow. That law, procedures and charges, are contained in the Police Retention and Disposal of Vehicles Regulations 1995. Brian, that may well be so. The argument isn't the procedure they use. The argument is that the motorist gets ripped off by a garage commissioned by the police. The police have obligations, of course they do, and they pass them on to a private company. That's not what the Act says.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline News.
A call to delay the public consultation over Greater Manchester's congestion charge has been rejected. The consultation is due to start on Monday. We've been hearing from the new leader of Greater Manchester's Transport Passenger Executive, who says he's not being given enough time to make sure the process is balanced and fair. More than 1 million 11 and 14-year-olds in England will not get their SAT results on time because of administrative and computer problems. And the veteran BBC reporter Sir Charles Wheeler has died. He was 85. Manchester's weather dry and warm this afternoon, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Matt Trewern.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Taking a quick look now to the M60, and traffic's moving well between Junction 2 at the Cheadle Roscoe's roundabout up towards Junction 5 at Princess Parkway, clockwise and anti-clockwise. Everything looking quiet on the M67 and the M62 across the Pennines. No delays in the city centre of Manchester, but if you are heading northbound along the M6, you'll meet up with delays, I'm afraid, around Junction 26, the Oral Interchange. It's a backlog of traffic from this closure further on the northbound between 29 Lostock Hall and 30 the Blacko Interchange after an accident happened there earlier on. You'll be diverted off the carriageway at Junction 29, then onto the M65 East, onto the M61 North, rejoining the M6 at Junction 30. That's the way that you're heading today. Don't forget, if you can update me further, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Joanne Smith.
Good afternoon. The future of the British Formula One Grand Prix has been secured until at least 2020, but that's at the cost of Silverstone as its venue. From the 2010 season, Donington Park will host the Grand Prix. It means Silverstone loses the race it's staged since 1987, but according to F1 boss Bernie Ecclestone, they just didn't get their act together.
Silverstone couldn't do what was necessary to retain the British Grand Prix, and Donington appeared to have been able to do that. They're going to rebuild. Had we have not done something, we wouldn't have had a British Grand Prix.
Well, it's men's semi-finals day at Wimbledon, and it's been the best possible start for defending champion Roger Federer. He's taken the first set 6-3 against Russia's Marat Safin. Later, second seed Rafael Nadal faces Germany's Rainer Schuttler. If reaching the ladies' final wasn't enough, the Williams sisters, Venus and Serena, are hoping to qualify for the doubles final today. They're just underway on court 1. Meanwhile, we could be set to have a Brit in a Wimbledon final. Obviously not Andy Murray, but junior Laura Robson. The 14-year-old is a set-up and now involved in a second-set tie-break in the semi-final. Zimbabwe have been persuaded to pull out of the World 2020 Cup in England next summer. The decision was taken at the ICC meeting in Dubai. Zimbabwe do, though, retain their international status, so they can still play one-day internationals. It's a compromise after England and South Africa supported further reaching sanctions. The chairman of the England and Wales Cricket Board, Giles Clarke, was satisfied with the outcome, but says Zimbabwe's cricket is still some way short of an acceptable standard.
A subcommittee of the board has been set up to review all aspects of cricket in Zimbabwe to see what the current situation actually is and what needs to be done to help improve standards of cricket, the grounds and every other aspect. It's universally acknowledged there are major issues.
Mark Hughes seemed confident of signing Ronaldinho for Manchester City this week. However, the player's agent has now said he's 80 to 90% certain to complete a move to AC Milan. Ronaldinho has also been linked with Chelsea, or perhaps even staying with Barcelona. Bury boss Alan Nill says the lack of depth in his squad means he's still looking to sign a few players before the start of the new season. The Shakers finished strongly at the end of the last campaign, something Nill thinks is working to his advantage.
We're kind of light really as a squad at the moment, and I think we're probably looking at another 2, maybe 3 more players, plus maybe another loan or maybe 2 loans. So the sooner it's done, the better. And obviously the end to last season helps me to sell it.
Sale Sharks will begin the 2008-9 season with a trip to Newcastle Falcons. That's on Sunday the 7th of September. Sale's first home match will be against Saracens at Edgeley Park on Friday the 12th of September. Meanwhile, Wasps provide the opposition on Boxing Day, and newly promoted Northampton will visit Edgeley Park for the final game of the season. Sale have also finalised their pre-season schedule. Leeds will visit Edgeley Park on August the 22nd, while Lyon make the trip 6 days later. Salford coach Sean McRae says there won't be any complacency from his players. That's for their Northern Rail Cup final against Doncaster on Sunday. The Tisty Reds go into the match as big favourites against their National League 2 opponents.
There's an expectation that we should win this game, and I think we all expect that, but we've not taken anything for granted. There's no overconfidence in the camp. We know what it takes to be successful, and we're not going to go away from that. But we hope it's a terrific day for the players and for the club and for the fans.
And tonight's Rugby League action sees Wigan entertain Leeds in Super League. You can hear commentary on that game in Manchester Sports from 7 o'clock tonight.
BBC Radio Manchester introducing with Sam Walker.
Fantastic live sessions, news, gig reviews and tunes from the best new bands in our city. And there are some corkers, I can promise you that. How could there not be with such a rich musical heritage as ours? How many other cities can boast bands like this? This and this. And amazing new music is still being made in Manchester. Make sure you hear it first.
BBC Radio Manchester introducing with Sam Walker. Sundays at midnight or on demand at bbc.co.uk/Manchester.
Alan, I love your show. He's getting well angry. I don't even know what that means, you know. Well, Alan, how many cities are there? Says Guy. I don't know. I don't need to know. The question was, he said 46 billion in, Manchester only wants 3 billion out. And my point was that, well, if we get it, everyone will want it. And it was just a case of working out how many cities to work it out. We didn't even start on the towns and the villages. Never mind. 0161 228 2255. A referendum on the congestion charge will not kill it. All it will do is shelve it until this lot can sneak it back under another name, just like the referendum for Europe. It's yet another loony Labour idea. You might be right there, I can't disagree with that. If they had a referendum, and if the referendum said no, I think they'd just bring it back under another way and not bother with the referendum. That's how politics works. And Ace also says, 50% of my household agree with some of your points. The other 50% think you're an old loony liberal. How's that for figures? Me and my wife disagree sometimes, he says. Ace, listen, if 50% think I'm right and 50% think I'm wrong, then I can't be doing it too bad. My life has not been in vain. Adrian from Salford. Hiya, Adrian.
Hello, Alan.
What have you got?
Coasting downhill.
Oh, yes.
I thought you'd know this, being an ex-driving instructor.
I never worried about the fuel in them days. Go on.
Well, yeah, it was a lot cheaper then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the guy that came out with the long explanation, I think was the original guy you read out. All that was correct. If you're going downhill in gear, you're not using any petrol. If you're going downhill coasting, the engine's at the ticking over speed, so using petrol.
Really? So coasting downhill is, consumption-wise, more expensive than using the gearbox to, for want of a better term, hold you against gravity.
Yeah, the old engine braking.
The engine braking, that's it, yeah. So that's engine braking, in that context, engine braking is free.
Well, yeah, that...
Because gravity's doing the work.
Gravity is turning the engine over.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put the clutch down or flop it into neutral, nothing's turning the engine over, so the petrol's got to do it.
There you go.
Mean, some people take it to the X degree and turn the engine off going downhill, and then they realise the steering column locks up.
Well, yes, it does now, doesn't it, with the power steering, yeah. The first time I drove a car, I'd driven buses and things and lorries with power steering, but I'd never driven a car with one, and the BBC hired a car for a job I was doing, and I was going round a roundabout, and the engine cut out, and I nearly ran into a phone box.
Yeah,
Because I couldn't... Well, it's not that you can't turn it, but if you've got a car with power steering and the power steering goes off, you may know the answer to this. It seems heavier than if you've got a car that hasn't got power steering. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it is. I mean, it's like you've got to really work at it to turn the wheel. With that nice little flicking it around very, very easy, you suddenly got to think, but if I don't put the effort in, it's not going to get around this roundabout.
Well, indeed, but is it harder to drive a car with the power steering, for want of a better term, turned off, than it is to drive a car that hasn't got power steering? You're presumably having to turn the mechanism as well, aren't you?
Well, yeah, you've got to work at it hard. I mean, it depends what you learnt. You know, you probably learnt in the car that didn't have power steering.
I think they'd only just got the clutch.
Yeah, I did luxury in those days, but most cars have it now. So people who take the driving test these days in a car with power steering, they go out and buy a knackered out old Mini from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And they thought, oh, God, this is hard work to turn the wheel, and they've got to get used to it. But, yeah, if you're used to the power steering and the engine cuts out, you've
it's
really
a
got to be
nightmare,
quick
yeah.
to
Well,
get
it was a shock to the system, I'll tell you. Good on you, Adrian. I think we've got to the bottom of that. Thank you. Sean in Hyde. Hiya, Sean.
Yeah, good afternoon, Alan.
Afternoon, sir.
Yeah, I was just listening with interest before. You were talking about the police having cars removed and the cost of it and the garage fees, etc.
Yeah.
It was something similar. It's not quite the same, but something similar. I used to have a studio in Hyde, and it had a nice big shop window. And every so often, the local thugs on a Friday night would throw a bottle at it.
Yep.
And it used to get smashed. So we get smashed, someone can't afford it. You ring up, get a few prices for glazing. Have the shop reglazed, fair enough. Insurance would contribute, and you pay your excess. That's fine. Now, it got broken a couple of times, and the excess moved up to about £1,000. And then I'm in the process of having shutters put on. Meanwhile, on one Friday night, the shop window gets broken again. So I'm not aware of this. I've got my number above the shop, which is diverted straight to my home address. And if I can't pick up at home, it goes straight to my answer phone. So whatever work comes through, I either get myself or it goes through to my answer phone. So if anyone tries to contact me, I know I've been contacted. Well, anyway, the shop window goes through apparently around about 3 o'clock in the morning. The police obviously have drive past, see it, and automatically bring a glazing company to come and board it, which is fair enough. Now, this is the third time in about 2 months this had happened. I turns to work up on Saturday morning about 9:30, and the glazing company are outside, they're nice big sheets of glass. And I say, hang on a minute, who's asked you to do this? They say, well, the police have informed us. So before you fit it, how much are you going to charge me? It's £3.5 plus VAT. I said, how much for the boarding? £5.5, 500 quid plus VAT. Now, I'd known previously from having windows broken that the glazing's 700 quid. And the boarding up fee after midnight is £250 quid plus VAT. So there's a huge disparity between what would normally be charged and what is being charged once the police get involved.
Yeah, that's like when large companies, large organisations buy things, isn't it? When the council wants a window changing, it's like 500 quid. Whereas if you ring the local glazing firm, it's tenner.
Yeah, well, the irony is that the police have a list of companies that they use on a rotation of glazing companies.
Yeah.
So they all get a bite at the cherry.
Yeah.
The company that had glazed for me previously that had charged 750 quid is also on the list. So they're one of the companies that are working with the police to glaze. So
the whole thing is a swizz, because I think the police have got the obligation to make it safe. I don't think they've got the obligation to reglaze it.
Well, that was my gripe. So I rang the police up and I said, I understand, you ring it out, it's going to be expensive, it's after 12 o'clock, a glazing company's going to charge. I have no objection to that. Who instructed the glazing? The officer. can I have the officer's badge number because I need to place that on my insurance form? No. I said, well, at that point, I said, I am not paying for the glass. I said, at that point, I'm not actually paying for the boarding up. So I contacted the glazing firm and said, look, I will offer you 250 quid plus VAT for the boarding up.
Yeah.
I'm not offering you any more. And the piece of glass you've had cut, you can send the lads away now. I'm not interested.
I'm not interested, yeah, it's not my problem.
Well, it cost me nothing because he never come back to me for the boarding up and he never come back to me for the glazing.
No, well, he wouldn't, because he doesn't want to rock the boat and get off the police list.
It's just as soon as an external body gets involved, the price just goes through the roof.
I mean, we've got at some point to stand up for ourselves and say, look, thank you, police officer, for boarding up my window and organising that, because the alternative is that the police officer has to stay there. Because he's not allowed to leave your premises. Once he's taken responsibility for them, he's not allowed to leave them unattended.
Yes.
So he boards them up. So they're boarding them up.
Agree with the
so do I. They're boarding them up for the community's convenience, so that the officer can go and do work that's rather more important than standing by your broken window.
Which I completely agree.
Absolutely. But when they then start commissioning people to reglaze, what's going on?
Well, the
could you imagine if
on it was more than the original piece of glass we put in the first place.
Well, yeah, but could you imagine if somebody broke the window of a glazier's and they couldn't get the owner? They have to use the next one on the list, so a glazier turns up the next morning and finds a glazer firm putting his window in. And this is what the crap's going on. This is what I do for a living. I've got a room full of glass.
Well, the irony is, on the window, the previous firm had put, please notice, if broken, please contact this number, which is on a separate window, that they completely ignored. And then they said they tried to contact me. So, he didn't even ring me. He's not even come up and call a display.
Dear God. Well, there you go. Well, good on you. It's a great tale, and I'm glad you didn't pay. I'm glad you told them where to shove it.
Cheers, Alan.
Good on you, Sean. 0161228 2255. If you've something to say, that's fine. A caller said we need a housewife running the country. We had a housewife running the country. Her name was Margaret Thatcher. Yeah, that went awfully well, didn't it? It did indeed. Those are happy days, dearie me. 0161228 2255. If you've something to say, well, I promise you I'm interested. I really, really am. And Dave says, for your information, Alan, there are 50 cities in England. See, we're just doing England now. We're not bothering with the Welsh. Quite right, too. They're in alphabetical order. Bath, Birmingham, Bradford, Brighton and Hove, Bristol, Cambridge, Canterbury, Carlisle, Chester, Chichester, Coventry, Derby, Durham, Ely, Exeter, Gloucester, Hereford, Kingston upon Hull, Lancaster, Leeds, Leicester, Lichfield, Lincoln, Liverpool, London, Manchester, Newcastle upon Tyne, Norwich, Nottingham, Oxford, Peterborough, Plymouth, Portsmouth, Preston, Ripon, Salford, Salisbury, Sheffield, Southampton, St Albans, Stoke-on-Trent, Sunderland, Truro, Wakefield, Wells, Westminster, Winchester, Wolverhampton, Worcester and York. Those, according to Dave, are the 50 cities. So that would be 3 billion apiece. That would be, an awful lot more than 46. But no matter. Just thought I'd get it out my system. Albert says freewheeling downhill is not recommended as it reduces braking capacity and can be very dangerous. Which is probably true. And the ambulance charge, remember I mentioned in the event of a road traffic accident, the hospital, if an insurance company is involved, the hospital charges the insurance company, you if you like, a figure. And NH in Tameside says, I think this was introduced as part of the Road Traffic Act of 1930, so it's been around a while. There seems to be some difference on the proposed charge for Manchester in terms of the congestion charge, and that applied in London, says Anne. The London charge is a daily charge. Once you've paid for the day, you may enter and leave as many times as you wish. Residents within the charge get a reduced weekly charge of £2.50. OK, fine, I'll accept that. I've no idea, so I'm happy to accept that. And Alan, I for one am glad that Andy Murray didn't get past the quarter-final stages of Wimbledon. I saw the BBC interview with Murray prior to the quarter-final match, and he came across as the spoilt, arrogant schoolboy that he obviously is. There he was eating a fish supper while talking to the camera. Unbelievable. In Britain, we're always too ready to call our ducks swans. Murray is an ugly duckling that turned into a duck. He just isn't good enough. He's only 21, for crying out loud. Do give him a chance. And Pete Rimmer, you left a message for me about Ockley, but you left me the wrong number. Send me the right one. See you tomorrow, early doors, have a cracker. Ta-da now.
Heard the one about the MP, the comedian and the musician? I'm Andy Crane. Join me Sunday lunchtime from noon.